Emily Carter was a nurse, fresh out of nursing school and full of hope for her new job at St. Augustine's Hospital. The hospital, nestled in an old part of town, had a reputation for being one of the best in the state, but it also had a darker reputation, whispered among the staff and locals. They said St. Augustine's was haunted. Emily dismissed the rumors as nothing more than local folklore. She had always been rational, preferring to believe in science and facts rather than ghost stories. Little did she know, her rational world was about to be turned upside down. Emily's first few weeks at the hospital were uneventful. She worked the night shift, a time when the hospital was eerily quiet. One night, as she made her rounds, she heard the faint sound of a child crying. The sound seemed to come from room 305, a room that had been empty for years due to renovations. With a sense of duty, she approached the room. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space. The crying stopped abruptly as she stepped inside. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The air was heavy, and she could see her breath misting in the cold. "Hello?" she called out softly. There was no answer. She searched the room thoroughly but found nothing. As she turned to leave, she felt a small, cold hand grip her wrist. She spun around, but there was no one there. The sensation of the touch lingered, and she could see faint, child-sized handprints on her skin. Terrified, Emily ran out of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She reported the incident to her supervisor, who brushed it off as stress and exhaustion. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The next few nights were filled with more disturbing occurrences. Emily heard whispering voices echoing through the halls, voices that seemed to call her name. They were soft at first, but grew louder and more insistent. The voices seemed to come from all directions, surrounding her. One particularly terrifying night, Emily was in the hospital's basement storage room, searching for supplies. The whispers began again, louder and more desperate. She tried to ignore them, focusing on her task. But then the temperature dropped suddenly, and she saw her breath misting in the air. The whispers grew into screams, and Emily felt a force push her against the wall. She struggled, but the unseen entity held her in place. The voices were deafening now, a cacophony of anger and pain. Emily closed her eyes, praying for it to stop. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The voices ceased, and the pressure holding her against the wall disappeared. Emily fell to the floor, shaken and terrified. She knew she couldn't stay in the hospital much longer. The spirits were becoming more violent, and she feared for her life. Emily decided to take a leave of absence, hoping that some time away would help her regain her composure. She returned to her small apartment, hoping for some peace. But the spirits of St. Augustine's Hospital weren't done with her yet. The first night back at home, Emily was awoken by a loud bang. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. The sound had come from the living room. She crept out of bed and peeked around the corner. The room was dark, but she could see the faint outline of a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The figure turned slowly to face her. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned hospital garb, her eyes hollow and dark. The ghostly figure raised a hand, pointing directly at Emily. Emily screamed and ran back to her bedroom, locking the door behind her. She could hear the ghostly figure moving around the apartment, footsteps echoing in the silence. She pressed her back against the door, praying it would hold. Over the next few days, the hauntings at Emily's apartment grew worse. She would wake up to find objects moved, her furniture rearranged, and strange symbols drawn on the walls. The whispers returned, now filling her home with their eerie calls. Emily's mental state began to deteriorate. She barely slept, jumping at every sound and shadow. She contacted a paranormal investigator, desperate for help. The investigator, a woman named Sarah, arrived the next day. As Sarah walked through the apartment, she confirmed Emily's worst fears. The spirits from St. Augustine's had followed her home. They were bound to her, feeding off her fear and energy. "We need to confront them," Sarah said. "You have to face them and let them know they don't have power over you." That night, Sarah and Emily prepared for the confrontation. They lit candles and placed protective symbols around the apartment. Emily felt a mix of fear and determination. She had to reclaim her life. As midnight approached, the temperature in the apartment dropped sharply. The candles flickered and the whispers began again. The ghostly figure of the nurse appeared in the living room, her hollow eyes fixed on Emily. "Why are you here?" Emily demanded, her voice steady despite her fear. The ghost didn't respond, but more figures began to materialize around her. Patients, doctors, and other nurses, all with the same hollow eyes and anguished expressions. They moved closer, surrounding Emily and Sarah. Sarah began to chant, invoking protective prayers and asking the spirits to leave. The air grew heavy, and the spirits seemed to resist, their forms flickering in and out of focus. Emily joined in the chant, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Leave me alone. You have no power over me," she shouted, her voice echoing through the apartment. The spirits paused, their forms wavering. Emily felt a surge of strength and continued chanting, pushing back against the fear that had gripped her for so long. The ghostly figures began to fade, their anguished expressions softening. One by one, they disappeared, until only the nurse remained. She looked at Emily with a sad, hollow gaze, and then she too vanished. The apartment grew warmer, and the oppressive weight lifted. In the aftermath, Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. The spirits were gone, and her apartment was once again her own. She thanked Sarah profusely, grateful for her help. Emily decided to resign from St. Augustine's Hospital. She found a new job at a different hospital, one without a haunted past. The experience had changed her, making her more aware of the unseen world around her. She knew she would never forget the ghosts of St. Augustine S, but she also knew she had the strength to face whatever came her way. As she settled into her new life, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger. The hauntings had ended, but the memory of those chilling nights would stay with her forever.